Welcome to Let's Get Writing. I'm your host, Catherine Taylor. Let's Get Writing is a show about the processes of writing in all its wonderful forms. You get to meet your favorite authors here. Now, my guest today, hails from Newfoundland. He was drafted 8th overall by the Montreal Canadiens in the 1995 NHL entry draft. And he played parts of 3 seasons for the Habs and played professional hockey for almost a decade. Then we had a change, of course, because this is where he takes a really, I guess you'd say, a right-hand turn. In 2013, he graduated from MUN with an honors in folklore and English. And he proceeded to begin an interesting life in the arts, highlighted by acting roles on popular TV shows like Frontier, Letterkenny, Little Dog, Hudson and Rex. He's even tried his hand at stand-up comedy, public speaking, podcasts, and writing, which brings him to me. I'm going to talk about his new book, Fights, Film, and Folklore. It's his second book. His first book, Tales of a First Round Nothing, was a multiple bestseller and was well received by fans and critics alike. So I want you to meet my guest, and he is Terry Ryan. There you are. Well, we finally made it. We tried this. We tried to do this a few times, and finally, here we are, Terry. It's a pleasure to have you here. You know, we have something in common. We both have English degrees and honors degrees. I believe you have one as well. And my degree didn't proceed with hockey. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you made the transition from hockey to an honors student in folklore and what was it? Folklore and English.
Folklore and English, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it was all, none of that was planned. I hurt my ankle in 2001, I believe, 2002. I had a pretty bad ankle injury. I was playing professionally, and I had to get it treated a lot. And by professional, I mean in the minors. I wasn't in the NHL. I wanted to get back, but it's tough. When I say I had an ankle injury that was career-ending, people picture that I'm on crutches or something. No, I had a surgery, and it just made me not quite as mobile. And when you're talking about the NHL, there's a lot of great hockey players in the world. You know, there's 700 people in the NHL. 400 of my position. There's really not a lot of there's not a lot of room for those kind of injuries or setbacks if you're not a star. I was getting going. I wish I didn't get hurt, because I really would have seen, I would have gotten a chance to maximize my potential. That never really happened. But outside of that, I didn't really know what I was going to do, Catherine. I really didn't. I came home. First thing I did was start a youth development program for some disadvantaged youth from Northern Labrador called the Breakaway Youth Program. It was mainly Innu kids that wanted an opportunity, and it was education through motivation. If they went to school, they got to, we got St. John's Maple Leafs were here then. We went to some games, the Fog Devils. So really, I didn't really know what to do. And I'd worked, one thing when you're playing professional hockey, especially with the Montreal Canadiens, they really encourage you to be charitable with your time, more so than your money. Anybody can donate money, but so that basically I had a little bit of a history doing that, and I didn't know what I was going to do, so I did that for a little while, and for more reasons than one, I just couldn't run it. We had a small group, and it was tough to keep, and you're kind of living. You're always looking for, favors from the government, or there's a lot of organizational stuff. And I'm not saying that it wasn't great when I did it, but I just didn't see that being a career. I still volunteer with those kids. But I one thing led to another, and I realized I had some money there for lack of a real long and unnecessary explanation. In my contract, I did have some money. I think it was for 15 years, whatever. If I wanted to go to school, I got some of it taken care of. So why not do it? Growing up, I was really interested in creative writing. I did it a lot, actually. And, I don't think I let anybody know at the time, at least no close friends. That culture, I was a jock going to a school that bullies existed. And, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I didn't let people know I was writing poetry and stuff. I just didn't.
Yeah,
So,
well, maybe it wasn't the thing to do because you, if I recall from your book, when you were young and kind of alone and away from family, friends, and so on, you did turn to writing.
Exactly what happened, and I'm an only child. And there wasn't a globalization of the internet, so I couldn't just go on and FaceTime my friends. I was literally, and if I wanted to talk to them, I had to save up money to do that. It was a lot of money to be long distance calls, and writing. You would, write letters. So, I really enjoyed it, and for lack of a real long explanation, again, it took care of some anxiety. I was nervous about my hockey career, and it wasn't all bad nerves. I was excited to get it going. Like each game I look forward to, I really felt comfortable the more I played. I mean, when I was in Newfoundland, I wanted to play in the NHL. I didn't think it was a possibility. We had a bit of an inferiority complex then, before the internet and all that. I'd played in national tournaments, and you'd usually play the host the first game, so you'd lose 7-1, everybody gets a free hot dog, kind of thing. So that's what I just didn't think it was possible. And when I went away and saw that it was, and I started doing as well as I was doing here against my peers in BC and all over the world, I really felt a need to write all that I felt unique. And my dad and mom, when I was growing up, they always, I would say, made me, but they heavily encouraged me every night to read or write for 20 minutes. That was all, 20 minutes a night. And we'd add that up as you're a kid, man, and it really adds up, right? So I was reading, and it could be Rolling Stone magazine. I did that a lot, right? I had a subscription. Sure. They didn't really care as long as I read and interpreted. And so anyway, when I found out I had the money for school, it was about 2009, I decided to go back. I was a Red Bull rep for a couple of years. Nothing against that company. They treated me well. I just didn't want to do it for the rest of my life. I didn't feel fulfilled, I guess. And I was really used to, hockey was a different world. Like, you work at it and a lot of it's physical, but a lot of it is mental, and a lot of it is gaining confidence. And then a lot of that is an adrenaline rush. Like, I think that's what led me to the stand-up. And a lot of people, I wanted some kind of challenge. You're going out there, whether you're in the minors or not, whether it was the Montreal Canadiens or the Idaho Steelheads or the Hershey Bears or the Tri-City Americans, I always like going out there, and you don't know what's going to happen. It's very unpredictable. So you go into the game and it's like, boom, you got to start thinking. And I don't know, there's some level of rut, and you're performing for groups of people. Even in junior, I was playing in front of 15, 20,000 fans some games. And there's TV games, and then you play in the under 18 Team Canada. So you always feel like you're in this spotlight, and I don't know, it just wasn't there anymore. So I wanted a challenge. I went to school, and I didn't really know, Catherine, what I was going to do. I went in there, and I remember I just started taking courses because I liked them. And when I went to see the academic advisor, and I took a lot of anthropology, and that crosses over with folklore. Right. So for whatever reason, I don't know, I was interested. I like the traditions and, societies, communities, and it's always really intrigued me. What makes people tick in the history, like not just politicians or whatever, like Michelangelo or Julius Caesar, whoever it is. And when you study these people, there's always some level of folklore around it. What was happening in the world at the time? What were the traditions? What were the heritage of these cultures? And for whatever reason, I like to read a lot. I like to write a lot, but I do like to read a lot, and none of it was ever fiction. So I said, why don't I go in and actually read the same things I'm reading, but get credits for them? And really, when I went in to see the academic advisor, she said, you're only a few credits away from a folklore degree. And I knew the English, that was just an extension of what I'd always done. So I knew she said, you've already got your 12 English credits there if you want them. And I had enough general studies. And I never wasn't going to school. When I played for the Montreal Canadiens, I was always taking a course or two. I don't think people realize that. So when I went to see her, I had like 32 credits. I needed 40, I think, right from MUN or courses. And I'd already had like a bunch from Washington State University back in the day that transferred. And so then, this is a long answer to your question, but folklore, English, I went with it, and I was I was just interested. So the degree I got because it was the courses I was taking that I was interested in. I had no plan. I just wanted to get a degree. More to prove people. I don't know why, but I felt like a failed hockey player in senses, and a lot of people, just all of a sudden now what am I going to do? I really felt like I felt like I was in the spotlight, and I felt like I let a lot of people down, and I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to follow this, and I know a lot of people aren't going to think the degree. Not that I always feel like I'm under the spotlight, but for a degree I was a first round pick for the Montreal Canadiens, and I didn't want to I was sick of just pacing through life, the Red Bull job and everything. So that was it. And once I did, Alan Hawko's a buddy of mine, and Alan was the lead. He was Jake Doyle in Republic of Doyle, and he wrote a lot of it and directed it. And to be honest, that's what I was interested in. So yeah. Honestly, he was going to a hockey tournament in Toronto called the Exclaim Cup, the Summit of Arts hockey tournament. And it's like Leonard Cohen had a team. I mean, he was coaching at the time. Tragically, I had a team in there. Sloan. There was all kinds of there was radio stations from Montreal. I remember there was like 50 or 60 teams, and you had to be involved in the arts community. Dave Bedini and the Rio Statics had a squad. So I played because Hawk said, do some background, and if you want to work in the crew on our show, I can take you to this hockey tournament. We can help each other. And then at that point, this would have been around 2012, 13. At this point, I was aware that the book was going to happen. When the folklore and the English really helped me not need to have a ghostwriter. I was always a creative writer, but I was kind of nervous about the grammar. I didn't show it to many people. But then, with that, if you want to call it a failed hockey experience, I grew courage or grew balls, for lack of a better way to put it. And I was just, I just wanted to try other things and be intrigued and do what I wanted to do. There's always those kind of phases that we have. I had a chance to do it. And Hawk said, you want to work on the crew in Republic of Doyle? And I did. And I mean, I started at the bottom. I swear to you, I was AD. I was production assistant for the most part, locations. It's really like jump how high. I was literally getting people coffee. I was putting up the tents for the cameras, making sure people didn't walk into the shot, cleaning toilets, cleaning up in the lunchroom, whatever it was. Like, people think I just walked in and got a favor done because I played on the Montreal Canadiens. That wasn't the case. It was 2 or 3 years of that. And I happened to be working on a show that Ethan Hawke was working on called Maudie, and got talking with him. And at that point, my book was out. So it was stages to this. Once my book was out, that gave me a little bit of relevancy, and people started, asking me to go on their radio programs, and that paved the way to do a podcast, because, I don't think anybody would have listened if they didn't really know who I was. But once the book came out, and people, that's what happened to that hockey player, and I see. And then I, started to use those radio shows as a little bit of a platform for my own work. And, a really longer story, not too long, for lack of a better way to put it again. I wrote and I directed a short film called The Stand-In, and I did get some minor roles and things, but I used that as kind of a resume, because I said, you can get it on YouTube. I just said, no one's going to give me a major role. They'd be silly to do it. I'm getting into acting in my mid-30s. So I did that, and I sent it around to directors. Honestly, I didn't even know who they were, some of them. But it did work out. Justin Oakey got it and put me in a show called The Fire in the Cold Season. And around, as all that was happening, I got to know Jason Momoa. And I got the opening scene in Frontier. A big part of that was having no tooth. They needed a British soldier who was beat up. It was only 3 lines. That's it. Please have mercy is all I had to say. And then as I got to know Jason and I got that role, he gave me a bunch of stunt roles in Braven, a movie called Braven, and a bunch of other stuff. And then, again, I'm saying to you, I'm not like an actor. I do it on the side. Letterkenny, it was all great. I've been in things, but now that anybody knows how the industry goes, if you're only an actor, you need to be in a lot of things. It pays pretty well, but you might get 4 or 5 days a year, right? Like when I was on Hudson and Rex, we did all that in a day. The episode might be shot over a 5 or 6 day period, but they were going to get your scenes in to save on money. And I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I'm not an actor. I do those things on the side. I have a lot of things going on, and I think that to get back to that adrenaline rush, and I think the sporadic work, the public speaking and the podcasts. I do some stand up here and there, you know, whatever it might be, the acting. I like that because it's all spur of the moment, and I don't, you know, I do have to think about it. I mean, when you get in a role, you have to remember lines and everything. But when they say action, I feel the same as when I jumped over the boards to take a shift in professional hockey.
That's interesting, because I think a lot of people who've been where you were and trying to have to pick up the pieces and find themselves again, when you have one thing that you thought you were going to do and you were very good at it, you know, it's not easy. I could see where you could maybe have anxiety over that, or how am I going to do this, or I'll keep this to myself till. And I totally get the adrenaline rush. I mean, any of those things that you do, it kind of would replace that feeling of get up there and do stand up. And I liked in the book that you referred to that, like, was like, come on, like, just do this or don't do it. You know, just get off the pot and do something, Terry. You more or less said to yourself and pushed yourself to do it. It's very cool. I want to come back to the book because I can tell that you can certainly tell stories. But I want to talk about the book a bit, Terry, so that people can get a feel for it. Now, I'm going to have to confess, I've probably not watched very many hockey games. And when I did, it was, I know, high school.
To each their own.
But your book, I thought, you know what, I have it right here. Here we go. I said, okay, I'm going to read this. And the way you write and the stories you tell, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. And you made it interesting. You know, you really did. If somebody's not a hockey fan, this is still such a great read and a fun read. And so talk a little bit about it, if you want.
I do really appreciate that, because I'm aware of that. And part of the reason I think I wrote the book in the first place, my first one, I mean, you'd have to ask my therapist, but I think because it was like therapy writing it. I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed, and all the stories in there, you know, a lot of them are, you know, edgy, but they're also, you know, they're pretty elaborate and specific. So I don't ever want to get a detail wrong. So I call back my friends. I'm like, look, this is the way I've been telling it. I've been on the back of a hockey bus for the last 20 years, playing senior hockey or coaching or whatever it might be. And this is the way it happens. So like Mark Hurley or Zenith Komarniski or whoever, like, guys, is this the way it went down? And then they'll repeat back to me, you know, or they might add a detail that was in November, not May. And I like to, you know, so the point here is that it was great because I'm reaching out to talk a lot of my old friends again. So that's great. And then I'm also refining the story, and I tell them a lot, which is also awesome for my podcast and a lot of other reasons.
Right.
But you know, I also, there's layers to me, and I always felt that. And in the public, I was always known only as a hockey player. And I got to be honest, like I really didn't like that. I hated it. And I know some other guys and girls in the same boat. Maggie Connors, for example, a great young hockey player I had on my show, goes to Boston University, sorry, great hockey player. You know, everybody knows Maggie is a great hockey player. She's working on her master's. I forget what in. You know, so those are big things that, you know, also define somebody. When I was growing up, we used to have a program here called the enrichment program. At the beginning of the year, you would do these standardized tests, and if you finished in the top 1 or 2%, you got to go to a special school once a week. So I was doing that from grade 5 to 9. I was horrible at math and everything, but I was really good at the creative writing part and the history, because I was into it when I was like 5 and 6 years old. So like my dad's a big reader. So, you know, I could always, and I love to write, short stories and plays and movies. And like I was doing that when I was 5, right? So as far as the Montreal Canadiens, they always were my favorite team, but like I loved Red Fisher, one of their writers for the Gazette, Montreal Gazette, as much as I looked up to Guy Lafleur. I really did. So like I like the whole culture of it. It wasn't just drop the puck and watch these guys play hockey. When I went to the Montreal Forum for the first time, we were in Montreal for a hockey tournament in Pee Wee. Well, I went to the rink the day before just to walk through it and take it all in. I was like 12 years old, and you know, I wanted to see and take in the Montreal Forum. I wanted to meet the vendors. I wanted to experience it all, and I've always been like that. And you know, I'm good at hockey because I grew up playing it and I have a passion for it. But I liked everything that went with it. I loved, you know, when I was injured a lot in these teams I played for, but I'd do the color. I'd work in the radio booth or whatever. And I'd come home and, you know, I'd always get the same question. Well, some people would say it very graciously, very nice, and Terry, oh, too bad, what happened, and they'd give me a hug or whatever. And I'm like, well, after a while, I was like, too bad, I guess, but I did play in the National Hockey League. Like, it's not like I left here and decided to quit for no reason. Like, I got hurt. I played, right? Yeah. I know I didn't play a lot, but I got hurt, and there's really nothing I could do about that. So I just figured, I know some of it subconsciously now, looking back. I never really admitted it at the time, but it was, I really love writing, and I wanted that as much on display to define me as the hockey. And really, like, I feel so much more comfortably mentally because I chose to do that. And with it came the film and all that. I mean, I talk about all that. This book, by the way, the first one, they're both memoirs. People think the first one's a life story. It's not quite. They're stories in chronological order because I wanted to include a team that I played on. And, they do kind of follow my life. But if I was to, again, no one would buy my autobiography, really. I'm not big enough like Bobby Orr or Wayne Gretzky. But those were memoirs that it's the closest thing to an autobiography really as I'm going to get. The second one, there's stories that happened to me, but, again, I just like writing, and it was a continuation, right? The fights is the physical part of hockey. The folklore really is just some more anecdotes. And the film, I wanted to catch people up. And the film, you never divert too much from hockey, but I wanted anybody to be able to read it. So that's the best compliment that you can give me, is that I'm not a hockey fan, but I like the book. That makes me feel like I did after I scored a goal.
Well, you did do it. And I mean, the other thing about you is you have an amazing sense of humor, and that comes through in the book. Like, I'll tell you right now, I would never go to sleep in a room and leave you with a magic marker, because I'm sure I would wake up with like a mustache or really groovy eyebrows.
Yeah, that would have been me.
Yeah, I think so. And I found those stories were so hilarious. Like the few of them that you told, the things you did, I thought, oh man, don't let them loose.
Well, there was always a lot of people lead different ways of, and when you're, and the reason I say that is because sports, I find, a sports dressing room is really, I find it a microcosm of real life. If you succeed at hockey, if you make it from midget to junior, if you make it from junior B to junior A to pro to the NHL, you'll see that the further you go up, it's the more and more leaders there are on each team until you get to the NHL, and everybody up there is a role model, right? Like, for the most part. So in one way or another, they're all exceptional at something. And when you get there, they've all had to speak, they're all the best players, even the guys who don't score a lot. It's the National Hockey League. They were to play around here, rec hockey or something, they would light it up. So they've all had some history of success, and you get up there, you got to find your way. But it's leaders, and some leaders lead by example. Go out there. Saku Koivu, when I played there, wasn't the most vocal in the room, but he led by example, and he was a good professional guy. Mm-hmm. Shane Corson definitely was great in the room. Like, he would always be talking. Here we go, guys. This is what we got to do. We're here now, and there's a lot of sayings. Empty the tank. Whatever. 110% every night. Whatever you're going to do, but guys need to be reminded. And then I was a little bit of the first two, but I love it. It can give you a lot of anxiety, that life and the uncertainty, and there's trades, and you're doing what you love to do, but really it's really not, it's hard. It really is hard. A lot of people don't want to hear that. Fans, they think, it's all rainbows and cartoon bluebirds, but it's not, man. It's a tough life, from the unpredictability to, you got to keep yourself in shape. And, a lot of people just think how hard it is to diet. Well, we all don't want to be working out every day and eating immaculately in it, but the reward is a great reward. So, but anyway, what I'm saying is that a lot of anxiety comes with, so I really would keep the humor going. I was definitely that kind of guy that would have stories, usually with a bit of humor to them. And I would lead that way. And, a lot of that's being from Newfoundland. A lot of that's being an only child. I looked at the kids. Again, this is why the whole game is therapeutic for me, for a lot of people. But I looked at my teammates as my brothers, and and if you're not in a good place mentally, it's an impossible sport to conquer.
Yeah, and I think with any, sort of, when you get at those levels, Two, it's about money. It's driven by money, so you got to perform. There's a lot of pressure
Yeah.
on you. There's a lot of expectation. There's the bottom line to meet. So I get all that. I can imagine that it would be stressful, and I think humor, would be a good way to cope with it. We don't, Terry. I know this is hard to believe, but we don't have a whole lot of time left. I just want to take a minute. If you could just tell us the name of your podcast. Is it Tales with JR or TR?
Yes, it's Tales with TR, and it's under the umbrella of the Hockey Podcast Network.
Okay.
And it's really, it's unpredictable, like myself, I guess. But sometimes I go on there alone. Usually I have a guest. It's usually somebody that I came across in the hockey world. Doesn't have to be hockey though. Like Jim Cuddy, for example, wrote the foreword to my first book. He's been on. Ron McLean. There's a lot more depth to Ron McLean than Colin Hockey Night in Canada. I tell you that. The guy's one of the smartest people I've ever known. I have a lot of musicians on, and just interesting people. But for the most, because I also, the way it is when you do these shows, I'll get people, hey, TR, I got a great guest for your show, or do you want to be, or can I be on your show? And that happens here and there. But what I like to really do, because I've come, as you see, right, it's a journey, and if there's one thing I learn in folklore, is that your identity is forever changing, and forever. And if I look at, there's just so many people and experiences that go into me being me, and that is forever changing and around me, from the people I meet to the sports or the activities that I tend to choose to be involved with. My daughter now is 10 years old, and she's on the scene. She acts as well, and she plays soccer, and that's getting, more and more serious every year. So, or fun and more fun. But anyway, so I just find that we're moving along here, and I like to keep myself challenged. But the game of hockey, to get back to it, why I wrote it and everything, is it's unique, but it's not. I think what it is a series of situations that happen in life. It just takes longer. Like, for example, I know we don't have much time. Let's just say it's the end of the game. I don't have to. People, there's fighting in hockey. So obviously the easy example, if someone gets cheap shotted on your team, you run in and you fight for them, right? But it could be the end of the game. It could be 3-0 and your goalie has a shutout going, right? And stats are a big thing. And you might see a guy, you get the game won. There's only 10 seconds left, right? The other team has the puck, but someone goes down and blocks a shot. And that's that puck coming 100 miles an hour hurts. But, they block it with their feet. And why'd you do that? Well, Bobby was going for a shutout. Got to get him the shutout. And so it's this immediate, you can see an immediate reward there. Like, okay, this guy just got traded to my team last week. But the way it works is that, you got to pick up for me. Whereas I might work at a job and be in the same stall next to somebody for 10 years. But I don't know. I don't really know. Does he have my back? Does she have my back? If the boss comes in now, are they going to say that I was eating a sandwich when I should have been working? It's so immediate, right? But all of this happens at some point. You're going to have to pick up for somebody, or at some point you're going to be on the spot. Your coach is going to call you in, or your boss, and say, "Hey, is Jimmy doing his job?" Or you might have to, I had to be. I mean, hockey's fun, but 18, 19 years old, living on your own in Montreal, you got to learn to be responsible really quick. Whereas my buddies, that was happening after college for the most part. It's just, I find it teaches a lot of life lessons. It's just really accelerated, right?
Right.
And there's a lot to unpack there, but anyway, that's the way I see it.
Well, Terry, I could talk to you so long. I just keep it at a certain length so that I can share it with Rogers TV. And but we can do more. We can do it on my podcast or back here again.
Hey.
But Terry, before we, I just want to thank you, and I'm just going to hold this book up here again for people so they can see it, check it out. And you're such a great guy. Like, you have so much energy and exuberance for life, and it shows in your book. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing some of that energy with me today.
Honestly, I really, really appreciate it, and thank you very much for reading it. It's an honor to have, honestly, a lot of the non-typical hockey world take in my book and enjoy it. So I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too.